He told her no one would ever believe her. 3 months later she opened a shelter that saved him, and hundreds like him, from hurting anyone else. Would you have the courage to run? It began with a small, ordinary lie. Emily said she was visiting a friend, then locked herself in a bathroom and counted breaths until the shaking stopped. 4 years that lie was the hinge of her life. The thing that let her leave the house, the thing that let her pretend nothing was wrong. But ordinary lies can become the last safe steps toward an extraordinary truth. That freedom is possible. This is the story of how a woman in the United States escaped a violent relationship, rebuilt everything that had been broken, and turned her trauma into a shelter and a voice for others. It is a story about fear, careful planning, grit, and the stubborn kindness of strangers who become family. Emily met Mark at 22. He was charming at first. Small acts of attention, a partner who remembered birthdays and songs. Over 2 years, attention curdled into rules. Where she could go, who she could call, what she could wear. The first time he hit her, she thought it was an accident, that he was ashamed, that he would never do it again. But the apologies became rehearsed, and the violence became a meter she read in the quiet. The slam of a cupboard, the silence after a wrong word, the way dinner plates trembled. Describe a specific evening. A family holiday dinner. Emily's aunt texts to ask when they'll visit. Mark reads the text, rage rises like weather. He rips the phone, screams about loyalty, and then pins Emily to the hallway, telling her she'll never leave. The neighbors are close enough to hear muffled words but not close enough to break the pattern. Emily learns the skill of shrinking, keeping her voice small, explaining away bruises with clumsy falls. She begins to inventory small things that could save her. A spare key hidden in a plant pot at her workplace, a bank card in a wallet she keeps at the office, the names and numbers of coworkers who might notice if she never appears. If you think escape is sudden, listen. Sometimes it's 1,000 tiny plans stitched together. The turning point is never the same for everyone. For Emily, it was the night Mark broke a framed photo, not at her but of her mother. He said cruel things about her, smashed glass across the carpet, and left. Emily sat on the floor, breathing through the pain in her hands from collecting shards. She realized the next time it would not be only glass. That night she started a list. Savings, safe contacts, shelter numbers, the color of cars parked outside. She opened a hidden bank account using a nickname. She copied important documents, passport, birth certificate, social security card, and hid digital copies in an email she could access later. She rehearsed an exit route and a story. How to say she was going to the grocery store and not come back. The escape itself was small and terrifying. On a rain-slick Thursday, when Mark left to work and the house was empty, Emily put a backpack by the door, texted a coworker code word she had chosen, and walked out. Her hands shook so hard the keys slipped. She walked to her car, drove to a friend's house, and then to a local domestic violence hotline. The voice on the other end was calm and immediate. They gave her options. A temporary shelter, a safety plan, legal aid. For the first time in years, she felt someone sitting beside her decision rather than shouting over it. She left with a backpack. That backpack held her future. Freedom didn't mean peace. It meant paperwork. Protection orders, court dates, forms with boxes where you had to describe bruises in clinical language. It meant proving what had been done to you to a system that sometimes moves in a different kind of cold. Emily spent nights waiting in courthouse lobbies, a folder clutched to her chest like a shield. She worked part-time jobs to pay rent, then full-time to keep her head above water. Sleep came in fragments. Therapy was a foreign and steady light. A counselor taught her to name feelings and to honor them instead of burying them. Group therapy introduced her to other women with similar maps of wounds. They traded advice. How to block an abuser online, how to change routines, how to explain gaps in employment without shame. Financial rebuilding took creativity. Emily accepted odd jobs, applied for emergency grants, and eventually found a non-profit that offered microloans to survivors starting businesses. She learned budgeting and how to file taxes properly. She found a cheap apartment in a neighborhood with a community garden, a place that smelled of basil and possibility. Slowly, the small joys returned. Sunlight across a clean table, the taste of coffee bought without permission, the sound of a neighbor's laugh drifting through an open window. Rebuilding is not glamorous. It is the slow stacking of small victories. At a community meeting, Emily told her story for the first time in public. She spoke quietly at first, then louder, then with a fierce clarity she had not known she possessed. People listened. A schoolteacher, a pastor, a social worker. One woman asked, "How did you not give up?" Emily realized she had answers that could help others. A friend suggested she volunteer at a local shelter. She started as a kitchen volunteer, then helped intake new residents. The work was raw. Women who arrived with nothing but a phone number scribbled on a receipt, children who clung to teddy bears and wouldn't speak. Emily's presence mattered because she had been there. She could say, "It gets better," and show how. While volunteering, Emily found flaws in the shelter system. Beds filled faster than staff could support, clients turned away, legal help delayed because of funding. She began fundraising, learning grant writing at night while working days. She trained to be a domestic violence advocate, took courses in trauma-informed care, and slowly built a network of legal partners and therapists willing to volunteer hours. Her small initiatives, a weekend bag with toiletries, a child's backpack with crayons, a list of safe employers, became models others copied. She didn't plan to run a shelter. She planned to help one woman at a time, and the plan grew. Founding the shelter was a series of steps that required both courage and paperwork. Emily incorporated a nonprofit, opened a bank account, this time properly in her legal name, and recruited a board of directors composed of survivors, lawyers, and local business owners. They signed a lease on an old community center and turned it into a refuge. Bright rooms, doors that locked from the inside, a small playroom with soft rugs, and a wall painted with names of survivors who had rebuilt lives. Funding came through small donations, local fundraisers, and 2 unexpected major grants, one after a local news piece profiled Emily's work. Volunteers brought furniture, lawyers donated pro bono hours, and a retired chef taught trauma-informed cooking classes. The shelter's real power was its culture. No shaming, practical help, and a focus on long-term rebuilding. They taught interviewing skills, provided childcare for job training, and partnered with landlords willing to rent to survivors. Emily set up a program for court accompaniment so survivors wouldn't face hearings alone. She established a hotline and an online resource center so help could be found quietly. She built more than a building. She built a village. With the shelter stable, Emily began speaking publicly. Her talks were not flashy speeches but short, honest stories about how people helped her and what actual help looks like. Safe housing, legal aid, steady income, and emotional care. She spoke to high school assemblies about consent and healthy relationships, to police departments about trauma-informed response, and to city councils about funding. Each speech planted seeds. A student volunteer started a campus emergency fund. A police captain revised training protocols. A council member allocated a small but critical line in the municipal budget for survivor services. Emily also pushed for prevention. She collaborated with schools to incorporate relationship education and with employers to create emergency leave policies for survivors. Her message was simple: prevent the next person from suffering what she did. The shelter became a hub for policy pilots. The ripple was not overnight. Change never is. But it was steady and measurable. Today, the shelter Emily founded has helped hundreds find safety and rebuild. But the story does not end with a ribbon cutting. In the quiet moments, Emily thinks about the woman she used to be, the one who hid in bathrooms and counted breaths, and she knows the work remains. She closes each talk with the same invitation. If you can, volunteer your time. If you can't, donate what you can. If you see something that might be violence, say something that might be help. Then she asks the audience to do one thing that costs them little but might mean everything to someone else. Learn the number of your local hotline, save it, and keep it somewhere private. Provoking final question to viewers. If you saw a neighbor always afraid to answer the door, what would you do? Would you wait for proof? Or would you offer a meal and a listening ear and the number of someone who can act? The most important thing Emily ever learned is that safety is social. It's built by people who notice, intervene, and believe survivors. Survival can become service. Trauma is not the end of a life but the raw material from which empathy, courage, and collective change can be made. When one person breaks free and says, "I will help the next," communities transform. Small acts of planning, kindness, and persistence can save lives. And each of us can be part of that saving.